The mahogany-paneled hearing room inside the Rayburn House office building was filled to capacity that humid Tuesday morning in September 2025. C-SPAN cameras captured every moment as Kellyanne Conway adjusted the microphone before her, her signature blonde hair gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. She had been summoned to testify before the House Oversight Committee regarding alleged Hatch Act violations during her tenure as counselor to President Trump. What unfolded next would become one of the most talked about confrontations in congressional history. Seated directly across from Conway was Jasmine Crockett, the young Democratic representative from Texas. At 44, Crockett had already earned a reputation as one of Congress's sharpest interrogators. But even she could not have predicted what was about to happen. "Miss Conway," Crockett began, her tone calm but cutting, "you've built your entire career on what you've called alternative facts. Today, we're here for the actual truth." Conway's lips curved into the familiar smirk she'd worn through countless television interviews. She leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. "Representative Crockett," she replied coolly, "I've handled far more formidable opponents since before you even graduated law school. You want to talk about facts? Let's discuss your voting record, your campaign finances, and the real reason you're so eager to make headlines today." The room erupted. Committee members called for order as photographers snapped furiously. It was the beginning of what would soon become the most watched congressional testimony of the year. Before we dive deeper into this remarkable exchange, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss our breaking political coverage. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens next. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Let's see how many states and countries are tuned in to witness this political showdown. The hearing had been set for 10 a.m., but tension had been simmering since dawn. Outside the Rayburn building, protesters from both sides gathered, some holding signs reading "Conway for prison," others waving banners that said "Witch Hunt." The stakes couldn't have been higher. Kellyanne Conway entered the hearing room at 9:45, dressed in a sharp navy suit that balanced authority with defiance. At 58, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had survived 4 years in the Trump White House, years filled with media battles and personal controversies that would have ended most political careers. Her legal team followed close behind, 3 men in nearly identical black suits who looked less than eager to be there. Conway had reasons to remain confident. Once an unknown pollster, she had become one of the most recognizable figures in American politics. She was the first woman to manage a winning presidential campaign, the originator of the phrase "alternative facts," and a veteran of endless political storms. Yet, she had never faced Jasmine Crockett. Representative Jasmine Felicia Crockett arrived even earlier, at 9:30 a.m., with her chief of staff and 2 legislative aides. Where Conway radiated cool composure, Crockett exuded focused intensity. Her deep purple dress, chosen intentionally, her staff would later note it symbolized the blend of red and blue, a nod to her message of unity. Crockett's rise had been swift, from public defender to state representative to member of Congress in under a decade. She had built a national profile for her precise questioning, her ability to cut through political rhetoric, and her refusal to be intimidated, whether facing CEOs, cabinet officials, or now Kellyanne Conway. The preliminary proceedings were slow to begin. Committee Chairman James Comer called the hearing to order, outlining its purpose: to examine potential Hatch Act violations during Conway's time as counselor to the president. The Hatch Act, for those unfamiliar, bars federal employees from engaging in political activity while performing official duties. Conway had been cited several times by the Office of Special Counsel for such violations, but she had never faced formal repercussions until now. Chairman Comer then yielded the floor for opening statements, and the room fell silent. Everyone knew this wasn't only about the Hatch Act. It was about accountability, about the Trump era, and whether anyone from that period would finally be held responsible for years of controversy and misinformation. Kellyanne Conway sat motionless, hands folded, her expression unreadable. Trained by the best media strategists, she avoided nervous gestures and kept her eyes locked on the cameras. She understood that in Washington, perception often is reality, and she intended to project strength. The ranking member concluded his opening remarks with a pointed statement, "Miss Conway, you took an oath to serve the American people, not a political party or a single man. Today, we'll reveal whether you upheld that oath." Conway's attorney leaned in to whisper something. She nodded slightly, then faced the microphone. "Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the committee," she began. "I'm here voluntarily to answer your questions. I have served my country with honor and integrity, and I reject any claims to the contrary. I look forward to clarifying the record." Her tone was measured and composed, the same Kellyanne Conway who had sparred with reporters for years and defended the indefensible with ease. Yet, there was a subtle edge in her voice, as if she understood this time might be different. The chairman opened the floor for 5-minute rounds of questioning. The first few came from Republican allies, offering Conway a chance to present her narrative as a devoted public servant unfairly targeted by partisan critics. Then it was Jasmine Crockett's turn. "Miss Conway," Crockett began without glancing up from her notes, a deliberate move everyone recognized. "Let's start with something simple. Do you know what perjury means?" Conway's eyes narrowed. "Of course, Representative. I'm an attorney." "Good," Crockett replied, finally looking up, her gaze sharp. "Then you understand that lying to Congress is a federal crime punishable by up to 5 years in prison." "I'm fully aware of the law, Representative Crockett." "Are you suggesting something?" Crockett gave a faint, knowing smile, the kind prosecutors give when a witness has taken the bait. "I'm not suggesting anything, Miss Conway. I'm simply ensuring you understand the seriousness of what you're about to say. Now, let's discuss March 6, 2020. Conway shifted slightly in her seat. That date was etched in her memory. It was the day she appeared on Fox News from the White House lawn, using her official title to publicly endorse a Republican Senate candidate, an explicit violation of the Hatch Act. On that day, Crockett continued, pulling up a video on her tablet, "You stood on White House grounds and said, quote, Doug Jones is a failed senator and Alabama needs to support Tommy Tuberville. Is that accurate?" "I was asked about the Alabama Senate race," Conway replied evenly, "and I expressed my opinion." "Miss Conway, you were standing on federal property, introduced by your official title, and speaking in your capacity as counselor to the president. The Office of Special Counsel specifically cited this as a violation." "Correct." Conway's attorney leaned in to whisper, but she brushed him off. "The OSC and I had disagreements about how the Hatch Act was interpreted." "Disagreements?" Crockett's tone sharpened slightly. "Miss Conway, the OSC recommended your removal from federal service. That's not a disagreement. That's a federal agency determining you repeatedly broke the law." The room fell silent except for the faint sound of typing from the court reporter. C-SPAN's cameras shifted between Conway and Crockett, catching every subtle expression. "Representative," Conway began, steadying her tone, "I've already addressed these matters. The OSC's interpretation was overly broad." Crockett interrupted, a rare move for the seasoned operative. "I'm not interested in talking points, Miss Conway. I'm interested in facts. Here's one: you were cited for Hatch Act violations at least 10 times. Here's another: you publicly said, and I quote, 'Let me know when the jail sentence starts.' Do you recall saying that?" Conway's composure wavered. "That was taken out of context." "The context," Crockett replied, holding up a document, "was a reporter asking you about the OSC's findings. You laughed and said those exact words. It's on video. Would you like me to play it for the committee?" Conway tried to regain control. "Representative Crockett, I see what you're doing. Trying to reopen the past because no one was ever held accountable." Crockett cut in. You're right, Miss Conway. That's exactly what I'm doing. The American people deserve to know why you believed you were above the law. I never believed I was above the law, Conway shot back, her tone sharpening. I was serving my country during an unprecedented time. And sometimes, Crockett pressed, sometimes what? Sometimes the law doesn't apply. Sometimes ethics don't matter if you think you're serving the right person. Conway's face flushed. That's not what I said. Then clarify it for us. When you violated the Hatch Act and the OSC confirmed multiple violations, what was your justification? My justification, Conway said firmly, was that I was doing my job representing the administration's positions. Your job was to violate federal law. My job was to communicate with the American people from the White House lawn about the administration's agenda. By endorsing political candidates while using your official title, Crockett countered. Her tone grew sharper, each question landing with precision. Miss Conway, did President Trump ever instruct you to violate the Hatch Act? The room gasped. It was the question everyone had been waiting for, the one that could tie Trump directly to federal misconduct. Conway's lawyer quickly objected. That question calls for privileged communication. But Crockett was ready. Mr. Chairman, directing someone to commit a federal crime is not covered by executive privilege. The witness must answer. Chairman Comer hesitated. Republican members shifted uncomfortably. Miss Conway, you may answer, he said reluctantly. Conway took a deep breath. President Trump never directed me to violate any laws. But he never stopped you either, did he? Crockett pressed. When the OSC first cited you, did President Trump tell you to stop? The president supported his staff. That's not what I asked. Did he tell you to stop violating the Hatch Act? Yes or no? It's not that simple. It is a yes or no question, Miss Conway. After being cited for breaking federal law, did President Trump tell you to stop? Conway hesitated. Answering yes would admit she continued despite warning. Saying no would suggest Trump allowed it. The president trusted me to do my job properly, she said. So that's a no. He never told you to stop breaking the law. That was when Kellyanne Conway made her crucial mistake or what she thought would be a strategic counterattack. Leaning forward, she spoke with the sharp, confident tone that had made her a fixture on cable news. Representative Crockett. I find it interesting that you're so focused on the Hatch Act when your own campaign has some serious issues to answer for. Crockett didn't react. We're not here to discuss me, Miss Conway. Oh, but I think we should, Conway continued, sensing an opening. If you want to talk about ethics and accountability, then let's discuss the $50,000 in campaign donations you received from a PAC currently under federal investigation. Republican members perked up. The unexpected turn changed the energy in the room. Crockett's face remained composed, but her posture shifted. She sat up straight, a faint, knowing smile forming at the corners of her mouth, a warning Conway didn't recognize. Miss Conway, Crockett said evenly, are you attempting to deflect from your own potential criminal conduct by making unfounded accusations against a member of Congress? They're not baseless. It's all public record. You're right. It is public record, Crockett replied calmly, catching everyone off guard. It's public record that I received fully legal campaign donations from a PAC that was later investigated and cleared of any wrongdoing. It's also public record that I chose to return those donations once questions were raised, even though I was under no obligation to do so. You know what else is public record? Crockett asked. Conway stayed silent. Your consulting fees, Crockett continued. The $500,000 you took from the Trump campaign while claiming to be an unpaid advisor. The shell companies you created to move that money and the fact that you never properly disclosed those payments. Should we talk about that part of the public record, Miss Conway? Color drained from Conway's face. Her attorney leaned in, whispering urgently. "I don't know what you're referring to," Conway said, though her voice had lost its edge. "No? Then allow me to refresh your memory." Crockett pulled out a thick folder and spread several documents across the table: transfer records, bank statements, and corporate filings, all obtained through lawful FOIA requests and public record searches. "Miss Conway, did you or did you not receive payments from the Trump campaign through CAC Consulting LLC while serving as counselor to the president?" "Any payments I received were for services rendered before joining the administration. These transfers are dated April 2020, Crockett replied. "You were well within the administration then." "Those were residual payments for prior work. Residual payments of $50,000 a month for work completed 3 years earlier." Crockett asked. "Miss Conway, do you take this committee for fools?" At that moment, Conway made her fatal mistake. Cornered and frustrated, she snapped back with the line that sealed her fate. "Representative Crockett, I've dealt with far more intelligent opponents long before you graduated law school. You want to talk facts? Let's talk about your voting record, your campaign finances, and the real reason you're so desperate for attention today." The room erupted. Committee members shouted for order as the chairman struck the gavel repeatedly. Through it all, Crockett stayed composed, a small, knowing smile on her face. When silence finally returned, she leaned into her microphone. "Miss Conway, I graduated from law school in 2006. Since then, I've worked as a public defender for people who couldn't afford justice. I served as a state legislator fighting for voting rights and criminal justice reform. And now, I'm a member of Congress holding people like you accountable probably for the first time in your life. You know what you've been doing since 2006? Helping wealthy men mislead the American public. So, by all means, let's compare records." The room went still. "You want to make this personal? Let's make it personal," Crockett continued. "You questioned my intelligence. Let's discuss that. I graduated magna cum laude from Rhodes College. I earned my law degree from the University of Houston and passed the bar on my first attempt. You, on the other hand, went to law school, passed the bar, and spent your career doing political polling and media spin. You've never tried a case, never defended a client, never practiced law. You just play a lawyer on television." Conway tried to interject, but Crockett pressed on. "You brought up my voting record. It's all public. I voted for health care, education, infrastructure for working families. Your record? Defending a president impeached twice who incited an insurrection and told over 30,000 documented lies. You mentioned campaign finances. I've already addressed mine, but let's talk about yours, about the dark money behind your polling firm, the foreign contacts you failed to report, and the fact that you're sitting here today because multiple federal agencies concluded you broke the law, yet you still act like the victim." Crockett opened her briefcase and withdrew another folder, this one marked with red tabs. The camera zoomed in as she opened the file slowly and deliberately. "Miss Conway, I'd like to show you something. Committee Exhibit 47. She raised a document for the room to see. Conway's attorney immediately rose. "Mr. Chairman, we have not been given these exhibits in advance. This is ambush tactics." Chairman Comer turned toward Representative Crockett. "Representative, what is this document?" "This, Mr. Chairman," Crockett replied, "is an email from Ms. Conway's personal account to Trump campaign officials dated June 15, 2020. It directly coordinates campaign strategy while she was serving as counselor to the president. This email was obtained lawfully through a subpoena to the campaign. Ms. Conway's counsel was informed of these documents 3 weeks ago." Conway's lawyer sat down slowly, his face grim. Crockett continued, "In this email, you wrote, and I quote, 'We need to hit Biden on Hunter before the convention. I can do hits from the White House to give it more weight. Is this your email? Conway examined the document, her face turning pale. Miss Conway, is this your email? I would need to review this in context, she said quietly. The context, Crockett responded, is that you were using your official position to plan campaign attacks. That's not just a Hatch Act violation. It's potentially criminal conspiracy to defraud the United States. Are you aware of that? Conway's voice barely rose above a whisper. I wish to invoke my Fifth Amendment rights. The room erupted in noise. Taking the Fifth during a congressional hearing was often seen as an admission of guilt in the court of public opinion. You're invoking your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination? Crockett asked pointedly, ensuring the cameras caught every word. On the advice of counsel, Conway replied. Yes. Let the record show that Miss Conway is refusing to answer questions about her potential criminal conduct, Crockett stated firmly. But let me ask you this, Miss Conway, and this isn't about criminal conduct, so you cannot take the Fifth. Do you believe public servants should be held accountable when they break the law? Conway was cornered. If she said yes, she would implicate herself. If she said no, she would imply government officials were above the law. I believe in the rule of law, Conway said carefully. That's not what I asked, Crockett replied. Should public servants be held accountable when they break the law? Yes or no? It depends on the circumstances. It depends. So sometimes it's acceptable for government officials to break the law. That's not what I said. Then what are you saying? Crockett pressed. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're saying that when you break the law, there should be no consequences, but when others do, they should be prosecuted. Is that the alternative fact you want us to believe? Crockett picked up her tablet and connected it to the hearing room's display system. Suddenly, a video appeared on screens around the room. Miss Conway, do you recognize this video? It showed Conway at what appeared to be a private fundraiser dated October 2020. Where did you get this? Conway demanded, her composure cracking. It was provided by a whistleblower, Miss Conway, someone at that fundraiser who was concerned about what they heard. Should I play it? Conway's lawyer whispered frantically to her, but she remained frozen. Crockett pressed play. On the screen, Conway addressed a room of donors. Her voice was clear, the Hatch Act? Please. That's for people who don't know how to work the system. You want to know the truth? We do whatever we need to do to win. The OSC can send all the letters they want. Who's going to enforce them? The president, he's the one telling me to go on TV and destroy Biden. The attorney general, he's on our side. Congress, they're too scared to do anything. We're untouchable, and after we win in November, we'll remember who stood with us and who didn't. The hearing room descended into chaos. Conway had just admitted on video to knowingly violating federal law with explicit support from the president and attorney general. Miss Conway, Crockett said over the noise, do you want to revise your earlier testimony about President Trump never directing you to break the law? Conway conferred desperately with her attorneys. Finally, one stood. Mr. Chairman, we request a recess to consult with our client. Denied, Crockett interjected before the chairman could respond. Miss Conway has had weeks to prepare for this hearing. She doesn't get to run away now that she's been caught misleading Congress. Miss Conway, you're still under oath. Did President Trump direct you to violate the Hatch Act? I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights. Did Attorney General Barr knowingly allow you to violate federal law? I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights. Did you lie to this committee today when you said you never thought you were above the law? I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights. Crockett leaned back in her chair, letting the moment settle. Every major news outlet was broadcasting live. Conway repeatedly taking the Fifth was devastating. But even cornered, Conway remained combative. During a pause as Crockett organized her papers, Conway seized her microphone. Representative